Hi everyone, I'm Catherine, aka the High Heeled Gamer, and welcome to the Late Night Nerd Show. I'm super excited because today's guest is founder, writer, visionary extraordinaire, Omari Malik from Black Tooth Publishing. Hey Omari, how are you doing?
So what's up? Thank you for having me. Like she said, it's Omari Malik, Mr. Everything at Black Tooth Publishing.
Yes, Mr. Everything. And that's because you are a man of many, many hats, one of them being writer. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, like you mentioned, Mr. Everything, because Black Tooth is kind of the brainchild of me not really wanting help from too many people. So me, having a bunch of ideas and wanting to see them executed. I was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. I've been living in New York since I was about 17 years old, but I've just been a lifelong comic fan. I tell people I was that guy. I was probably a marketing person's dream come true because every toy that had a cartoon associated with it, I wanted everything that you guys had on the shelves. So all, was into all, the 90s, well, the DCAU stuff, all the first wave of like anime and manga stuff. So, the Bakugans, Zedge Bell, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, everything. I had to
Not a
have.
lot of people mention Zach Spells. Like, no, like, not a lot of people mention that. So the fact that you said that, that's pretty dope.
So that's what I mean when I say, listen, if it had a cartoon and toys or cards, I was all over it. And, like most people, whether you're super into music or if you just, if you're very passionate about something, you can't help but want to create. So, since middle school and high school, having sketch pads and ideas written down about a bunch of stuff and developed to be what it is today, where, I came up with a bunch of characters, drew a bunch of crude drawings of how I think they should look alongside with a bunch of reference photos from fashion magazines and different things, and found a team and put it together and kind of did it from end to end of writing the books, editing the books, hiring the artists, telling them to adjust the art, and doing everything all on my own.
Now, in your Kickstarter bio and your own bio, you mentioned that you did the college thing, you did the corporate America thing, and then you was like, I'm out. Like, I'm done working for somebody else. I'm work for myself. Like, what would you still go to college today, knowing what you knew? Like from like if you had to redo it all over again, knowing what you know now, would you still go to college?
Definitely. I feel like college kind of gave me, college was a place I needed to be, one for, life experiences to be able to draw from and to meet a bunch of people and to make a bunch of connections, and also to understand a lot of things that, I see a lot of creative people don't understand as the business. So I went to school, I was a business major. So I studied risk management and insurance. And then I got
Oh,
my master's in executive management. So, kind of understanding how a business works, how to do marketing, understanding how to turn a profit, being able to be comfortable having those conversations of like, hey, I need this done. Wait, that price doesn't work for me. Wait, can we negotiate here? Can we figure this out? And just, like I said, understanding, the small things like how to structure a business email, how to structure a press release and things like that. So,
those are important. Yeah.
I definitely think college was worthwhile for me. And also, had I not gone to college, I definitely don't think I would have taken it as serious. Like, I've always wanted to do this, but I've always kind of been distracted. And when I say distracted, it's like I got really into music. Like, I've always been into comics, but in high school, I got really into music and learned how to play guitar.
Oh,
When I
wow.
college, I really enjoyed college. So I was having a bunch of fun and I wasn't really thinking about what I wanted to do. But the first inkling of wanting to take comics serious came after I graduated, and I had an internship, and I was about to enter corporate America, and I was sitting there like, I don't think I really want to do this. What do I really want to do? And that's when I first like started. I went back to my mother's house and dug through my old sketchbooks and kind of started to pull out characters. And then I ended up working that job and realizing like, oh, money is really nice, and corporate checks come every 2 weeks, and a salary is nice to have.
Yeah.
So that was beneficial because it also put me ahead in the sense of like, I had capital. Like, I had worked in corporate America for a couple of years, and been able to save up a bit of money, been able to understand how to navigate and how to negotiate because I was an insurance broker and then an investment banker. So kind of understanding, you know, how to have conversations, how to do different things. And kind of when COVID hit, that's when I started not to be able to take it anymore and just kind of being frustrated of doing this every day and realizing, well, it's like, oh, this money's not distracting me anymore because I bought all the sneakers and, my LCS is in love with me because I keep spending money every Wednesday. But let me get back to doing what I really want to do or, put, effort into something that I would like to do for the next 30, 40 plus years.
Yeah. Was it hard to transition from corporate America to actually doing what you're passionate about? Because it's a different structure, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of routine with corporate America. It's always the same thing, same day twice. But with creating and, running your own company, it's never the same day twice and everything falls on your shoulders. How difficult of that transition was it?
I say it to me, I kind of look at it the same way in the sense of like getting things done, but working for myself and doing a comic thing is a bit easier because it doesn't feel as fake. And when I say it doesn't feel as fake, for corporate America and most big businesses when they get too big, everybody's about maintaining relationships. I used to ask questions at work, but like, all right, so we're doing this process. Like, do we have to do it this way? Like, we can make it a little bit more efficient if we did this. Like, can we use a macro for this Excel spreadsheet? Like, and just asking some of those questions. And although to a lot of companies they would be beneficial, but it's like if you answer that question, then the person whose job that is might not have a job anymore. And it's like, we don't need to worry about this. Just do what you're told. Just do this. Just do that. And a lot of people just, pushing the ball along and trying not to get caught red-handed doing too much or saying too much. So with being able to do it by myself, it's like if I have a question or it's like I figure out how to do something more efficiently, it's no harm, no foul. And it's like I'm able to come back around. So it's like I had a guy design my website, shout out to him. But as a part of it, he also kind of showed me things to do so I can go in and update the website myself. Which in working corporate America, it's like, oh no, you don't take over tasks, you don't own things end to end. You everybody needs to do something, and we have to be too big to fail. But for me, doing things by myself, I'm able to go ahead and get it done. I don't have to send emails about emails and do updates about updates and just elongate processes that could really be done fast and carefree and, taking care of everything without having to do the fluff of being in corporate America. One of the biggest things that I used to hate is like we used to fluff numbers. And it's like, all right, so it's month end, so just make sure, just go ahead and earmark this and say we got it. It's like
Yeah.
so being able to be more moral, and being able to tell the truth and express myself freely and things like that.
So the Kickstarter is actually doing really, really well. And you're 85 backers, so you're almost at your stretch goal. You have 13 more days to go. So tell us about Blacktooth Battalion Volume 1, excuse me.
So, here it is right here. So I tell people first and foremost, the one thing about this Kickstarter is the book's already done. This isn't like a Kickstarter where, you're paying and it's like, all right, guys, once we hit our goals, then, in the next few months, we're going to get it done and we're going to actually put the book together. Like, no, this is basically just a pre-order campaign. So once people donate and, pledge to the campaign, you're just pre-ordering your copy of the book. I've already been selling books all summer and, kind of getting the word out there. So once we hit the goal, once I get the money back from Kickstarter, they're going straight to the printer and people will get them by Christmas because we end in the middle of, I think, like November 14th, but people will definitely get it by Christmas. And to tell people what it is, it's basically, my ode to things like Shonen Jump magazine or, the original days of comics where you have like Tales of Suspense and, Amazing Fantasy and all those books that our favorite heroes debuted in where they were just one story of many. So, this book, Blacktooth Battalion Volume 1, it contains 3 one-shots and you can get it as the combined anthology that I held up or as the individual one shots that are basically pilots, introductions to the first three heroes that'll be debuting from, Blacktooth Publishing and whatnot.
So one of the things that I find interesting and really, really cool about each of these characters is that you say that you're tired of the same cliche, tights, capes. You want them to kind of look like the everyday man and woman or child teenager. And they actually do. They really do. And like I've said it before, I'm a fan of original. I'm a fan of different because once you've read comics pretty much your whole life, it does become redundant. So how important was fashion when creating these characters to have that every person like feel like they were plucked out of New York?
I living in New York, I'm a fashion head, so I'm like crazy into fashion. I'm a big sneakerhead. Actually, the first release that that beat my books coming out was a collaboration with my friend who owns this brand called Barriers. He did a collaboration sneaker with Converse, so we did a little mini comic to go along to coincide with that release.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'm big into fashion, big fan of, Virgil and, all, all of his proteges, whether it's Tremaine over there, that's the creative director of Supreme, and, that is heading up Denim Tears, my friend, shout out to Barter that owns Barriers and all different streetwear brands, shout out to Jordan at Hypeland, who's also a friend of mine and things like that. So I've always been into fashion, and being a music head, music and fashion go hand in hand, and especially since I was a punk rock and heavy metal kid, everybody is all in the, what kind of band tee you have, what kind of this, what kind of that. And
Mm-hmm.
in hip hop, everybody's fashion obsessed, so
Yep.
fashion has always been a big thing for me, and it's like the reason why I wanted my characters, to be kind of fashion centric or not fit like the generic, mold is the same thing I kind of tell people when they ask me what inspired me. It's like I wanted to do things that I want. It's like somebody has to have a really incredible pitch for me to pick something up with tights and spandex that's not already out there. Like if I see your character and it has a skin tight suit, I'm rolling my eyes unless you tell me something really cool. Like, and when I say really cool, like don't say, oh, he's like Superman, but this. Like I want it to be a dope story and stuff and like that. And I also, think about people that are around me. Like my mother's never been into superheroes and things like that. So, you show her anything like that, she's gonna roll her eyes. So kind of taking that perspective of me, being burnt out by living in comic book stores since I was in middle school, and then
Mm-hmm.
having a mother that would roll her eyes whenever I dragged her to a superhero movie. It was like, I wanted to do something different because my mother enjoyed Hancock. So it's like, what's the difference
Mm-hmm.
between Hancock and all these other things? And then, understanding, what that's what I mean when I say I appreciate college because it helps me look at things a little different. Like there's a reason why when, things get translated into live action, they do the suits a bit differently. They make things more tactical. They make things more like what people can actually wear and more practical. So, I wanted them to look cool. And then also that anime influence of, seeing Goku and Naruto and them basically in regular clothes and, seeing how easy it is for people, to cosplay and just get Naruto's jumpsuit or Goku's training gear. So, you know, so I wanted to, and plus, like I said, wanting to be different.
Mm-hmm. So I like that the Kickstarter has different tiers to accommodate everything that you're packing into this Kickstarter because there's a lot. Like I was surprised at how much you're jam packing into this Kickstarter so they can get the books individually, they can get it digitally, or they can get it in the volume set. What made you do the rewards that way?
So originally, like it was just gonna be, kind of this version, the combined graphic novel edition, and then people being able to order all three. But every interview and every time I talk about, my journey in the comics, I have to shout out my mentor, Greg Anderson, LSA, the creator of Isnana, because, just talking to him and leaning on him, Greg was like, you've been selling your book already. What if somebody already has it? You should just do it individual tiers for, the different books. And I was like, you're a genius. That's why you're my mentor. That's why I love you so much. So, he kind of had me rethink it and, basically like wanting to emphasize that the books are already done, so being able to give people different options, so for the people that we were just at Baltimore Comic Con and things like that, so for the people that might have bought one, it's like, all right, well, this was dope, let me check out the other ones and
Hmm.
things like that. So not being able to exclude anybody or make people forced to buy duplicates if they bought one and or bought two, just being able to be accommodating, that's a big thing. Because like I said, because I'm so into different things and have so many different toys and Funko Pops and all this stuff, I want to be able to get it any way I can.
No, I completely understand that. And like speaking of Baltimore Comic Con, we ran into each other. Well, I was tunnel vision because I that weekend was like so crazy for me. I had so much happen. It was insane. And you were able to flag me down because like I said, when I passed your booth, I was in tunnel vision. And I was so glad to be able to actually like physically meet you and see your setup and see the comics and actually pick it up. I mean, because I see it digitally because you sent me the links and stuff like that, but having to pick it up, the paper was really nice. Like it is nice physically. Like, and then you say your mentor, Greg, who I know, helped you out. How important is that to have like a community like that?
So for me, it was. I definitely feel like I would have figured this out eventually, but Greg definitely helped me from a few of those scrapes and bruises because he was just a resource to be able to be like literally when I started taking this seriously and really putting in the groundwork and be like, all right, I'm gonna write a script. I'm gonna do all this. Bought all the how to write comic books there were, and watched all the YouTube
How?
videos and different things like that. But it's like, all right, now how do I actually do this?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where during COVID, Zooms with Greg, and then having he took me to my first convention. We did BlurCon together, and seeing him sell, but like I've seen him at conventions before, but it's like, all right, now I'm
It's
sitting
a
next to him,
different.
so
Mm-hmm.
it's like, all right, oh God, if I just sit here, no one's gonna buy it. So let me speak to people, let me do this, and let me do that, and then just being able to, it's one thing to like look up to people because I've always looked up to like Christopher Priest, Kwanzaa Sylvia Flora from Black and things like that, but
Yeah.
to have somebody that is similar to me like Greg, he used to work at my local comic book store. Like I live in Flatbush and he used to work at Bulletproof, which is in Flatbush. And
Mm-hmm.
to have somebody that's like doing it and be like, all right, like I can really do it. And I know I can really do it because Greg's doing it and I text Greg. I talk to Greg.
No,
So
and that makes perfect sense, especially when it's somebody like Greg. You know what I mean? Like I love Greg. Shout out to Greg. He knows I'm a huge fan and a friend. But it is a different kind of thing when you see somebody and you're just like, oh, like I wonder. Well, I don't know if you had these thoughts, but it has happened where you see people doing these things and you're like, I wonder if I can do that. You know what I mean? You kind of question it just a little bit because it's true. You watch these how-tos, you read these how-tos, but there's no actual implementation of the how to's. You know what I mean? They give you A, B, C, and you have to figure out D. Like, you know what I mean? But seeing Greg, who is so humble, so down to earth, so chill and tangible, actually doing it. And then you're just like, wait a second, he's my friend. If he can do it, yeah, I could
yeah.
definitely do it. And then, so how was that experience going from one side of the table one side of the table looking at Greg sell and then going to the standing next to him actually trying to sell. How was that like a weird transition for you or did you just pick it up like it was nothing?
I'll say, so being a musician first, and it kind of helps me out because it's one of those things where you don't think about it. It's like when I used to play in bands, and I'm also in a fraternity, so I was in a fraternity in college and doing step shows. It's like, all right, we practice, we practice, we practice, but now it's like, all right, don't think about it when you're doing it. So, you know, getting there and setting up the table, and it's like, all right, I just clock into that mode of all right, showtime. Like,
Mhm.
don't think about it. Don't worry about the jitters. Let be nervous later and
Mm,
things like that. So it's like
that.
it. I'll say a smooth transition because it's like I also try to be rational with myself, and it's like, I asked for this. I told myself I wanted to be an artist at LA, so it's like, being able to appreciate it, because it's like when Greg asked me to do it, I wasn't prepared for that, in the sense of like, you know, it was so funny because we were at Brooklyn Comic Con, and I just kind of popped up on him because we hadn't talked necessarily about my comics for a little bit, because I was
Mm.
just like, he gave me some advice. I didn't listen to the advice. And because of that, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just show him. He's not gonna know what I'm doing. I'm gonna just go ahead and do it. So I just went ahead and did it. Went ahead and got everything done. I popped up on him and gave him my books, and he was like, "You didn't listen, but I'm proud of you anyway. You want to do this con with me?" And I was like, I didn't even think about it. I just said yes. And like I said, just jumping head first into it. Being able to listen. Taking the steps, not being humble in the sense of like not being cocky, not thinking like
Mm.
I know what I'm doing. It was just like, whoo, breathe, just go ahead and do it. Just get it done.
Those two sentences will stick with me for a very long time. The whole "be nervous later, we got work to do." Like I
Yeah.
like that mentality. Like let's get this done, and if we need to be nervous later, we can be nervous later. And then just the whole fact that you're just like, no, I asked for this. This is what I wanted to do. Nobody else is going to do the work for me. Um, is that something that you were raised with? The whole not necessarily hustle mentality, but if you want something done, you have to do it. Nobody else is going to do it for you. Or is that something that you learned through being like in a fraternity and at college?
So I think the fraternity thing definitely was that you asked for this, in the sense of like, you wanted to join. So it's like you wanted to learn how to step. So, if the step practice is 2, 3 hours, like you said you wanted us to teach you. But definitely, I'll say like no one's gonna do it if you don't, because no, my mother wouldn't have jumped up and taken me to the comic store every weekend if I hadn't have begged her. Like
Mm.
I wouldn't have gotten guitar lessons if I didn't ask for it. Like I wouldn't have had Greg as my mentor if I didn't ask for it. So because of that, it's like I've always been into things that I was just, a step away from. So it's like, for a lot of people, they grow up around artists. You see a lot of that where, John Romita Sr., John Romita Jr., and things like that, where they have the access. I've always been into things where it's like no one else was into this but me. Like I didn't have any musicians in my family. None of my family is, a part of the Divine Nine or Greek. So it's like, if I wanted to do something, I really had to do it, because I wasn't doing things that other people in my immediate circle were doing.
Yeah. So real quick, like I like that a lot that you're just like, nope, and that you ask for help too. You know what I mean? It's a lot of people are just like, no, I'm gonna figure this out on my own, and then they drown. You know what I mean? I think that's cool that you're not afraid to ask questions, learn, and grow through comics, because that's kind of what, comics are all about. You learn the hero's journey, and you definitely have an awesome, fulfilling journey. Let's talk a little bit about the three singles that are in the Kickstarter in volume one. So the first book, do you have it? Do you have
Yeah,
the,
I have it.
yeah.
Just say which one. Say which one, and I'll pull it up.
So let's see, because I'm gonna butcher the first one because it's the
Adastra,
Adastra.
Adastra, yeah. So
I knew I was gonna
Adastra. So for
butcher it.
people that are wondering what the name's about, so the name's from a Latin phrase, Adastra to the stars, Adastra per astra, which is to the stars through perseverance.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I like that. That's dope. So tell us a little bit about the character and the story without giving away too many of the spoilers.
So the world famous elevator pitch is when you're 15 years old, or when you're in high school, people tell you you can be anything and everything you want when you grow up. Well, my main character, she's a shapeshifter. So she literally can be anything and everything that she wants, but she's struggling to be herself. So, that's kind of what the story's about. So I tell people, she's a 15-year-old girl. She's a shapeshifter. It's a teen drama, reminiscent of things like, those Teen Nick TV shows, Disney Channel shows where, she's rambunctious. She's into everything. She's having a bunch of fun. She's having boy troubles, school troubles, and she's trying to be a superhero.
It kind of reminds me of an old Nick show, like Clarissa Explains It All type of thing, where you have these powers and these things, but you're still a human being. You're still going through life, and 15 is whether you're a boy or a girl. 15 is rough because you're no longer a little kid, but you're not an adult. Like, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? So I thought that was like a pretty cool add on to the character because it gives the character more depth and more personality.
Exactly, and I felt like it was the most ironic thing ever when it's like every time someone asks her what she wants to be or what do you want to do, she can do it. Like because when you're also 15 and you're at that age, you think you know it all, you think you can do it all, but it's like, no, I really can. But it's like it's this everything in life is still hard because if they tell me to be a chef, I can shape shift into Wolfgang, I can shape shift into Guy Fieri, I could be them, but it's like, how am I going to be myself? Who am I going to be?
Now, how did that story come about? How did you come up with that?
So I have a younger sister. So I have a younger sister who's a sophomore in college, and it was just kind of looking at her, man. So I saw her go through a bunch of phases. I saw her as she was applying to college, kind of being stressed out about like what major she wanted to choose, kind of what she wanted to do, and then also being inspired by the fact that she was a Gemini, and I also had an ex girlfriend that was a Gemini. So they had very big personalities and things like that. So kind of inspired by the two of them, and same thing, hearing old stories about my ex girlfriend about she went through a bunch of different phases and she ended up doing a lot of different things like that. So wanted to appeal to them and also, taking a little bit of inspiration from me from being a punk rock kid to, being a comic kid. And a lot of people are multifaceted. So
Mm,
wanted to reveal that because, like you said, 15 is difficult because you're you're into so many different things, and a lot of high school kids, they have different friend groups. They have their school friends. They have when we go to grandma's house friends, and they might be on completely different waves.
yeah.
So you're shape shifting, you're code switching, you're doing a bunch of different stuff.
Mm,
So
I like that.
wanted it to appeal to people that are in that situation and whatnot.
That's cool. I appreciate that because I wish I would have had something like that when I was 15. Because Lord, I was going through some things too. But next up, let's talk about Dogpile.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So Dogpile, this one, the elevator pitches, a guy when he was 10 years old, lost everything in a mysterious accident, and he ran away. So rather than going into foster care, he ran away. He was homeless. He lived on the streets, and while living on the streets, he lived amongst stray dogs. And those seven stray dogs that he lived amongst as he was developing superpowers became his new family. And now, as an adult, he's going back home to fight crime and figure out what happened.
Good mystery story. I like a detective kind of story, if you will. Where does this do all of these stories take place in New York or they're in different locations?
So, this one is inspired by actually the city of Detroit. So they're all like fictional cities. This one
Mhm.
is inspired by the city of Detroit. Adastra is inspired by kind of like the suburbs of where I grew up, Richmond, Virginia. But Snakebite is definitely inspired by like Brooklyn and Chicago and things like that. But
Okay.
so this one, like I said, in kind of if you know anything about like kind of where Detroit is right now, where it's not as affluent as it used to be and things like that. So that definitely plays into it as far as him kind of struggling, being in a struggling city, kind of dealing with trauma and kind of figuring out not necessarily his place in the world, but just kind of figuring out how to cope with things so many years later. So, this story was a big one that's about loss, about trauma, about overcoming, and kind of tying that superhero element the same way I did with Adastra, when people go through things, they normally dig deep within themselves, to pick themselves back up, or, to find strength. So it's like his strength, he found out that he had superpowers. He developed superpowers, and versus, when I went through things and losing my father at a young age, I found comic books and music. He found dogs that he could channel his powers through. So wanting, to draw those parallels, making it similar to real life, but also, having it be fun, having it be creative, not having it be as depressing, because, if you strip away some of the, layers, it's a very relatable story,
Mhm.
but it's not as fun, wanting it to be, kick ass a little bit. This one is drawn like a manga, so
Mhm.
also an ode to my love of things like Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, and all those sort of things. Like I feel like, our community especially has really embraced anime. I can't tell you how many rappers I've heard drop bars about Vegeta and Naruto and hand signs and all sorts of different things.
Cosplaying them, doing the moves during the Olympics, like that one, I was just like, let's go. We're here. Let's do it.
Even like being an Izzy fan and seeing him do the Reaper Death Seals before before MMA matches. So I wanted to do something because even when we were in middle school, everybody's drawing stuff. So it's like, all right, let's do something for us. That
Yep.
isn't in a world that's so unlike ours. Being able to insert ourselves into the story, but not doing it in a corny way, doing it in a way where it's a dope story, and it's just so happen to be like, oh no, like he looks like me, so this cosplay is super accurate, and this is
Mhm.
super dope. So
Yeah.
you know,
I don't know if you noticed my face at Baltimore Comic Con when I picked up the book and you were like, it's manga inspired. First I went through shock and then I opened the book and I was so delighted. I don't know if you saw that on my face. I was like, did he say manga? And then I opened it up like, oh yes, it is. It definitely is. So I was like so excited about that too, because a lot of, you know, you and it's not a diss to any indie creators, obviously, because I love y'all. But a lot of they stick to traditional looking comics, whereas you were like, no, I'm gonna do a comic that's manga inspired. Um, so I thought that was pretty dope, especially when you say it and I open the book and it's like I see it 100%.
yeah. So like I said, that's what it is. Like I also like feel like a bunch of Americans just have like, I don't know if it's just like we're afraid to do it or afraid to go full tilt into the manga world, but it's like, nah, I want to do this. Like, I've been around this. Like, I watched Toonami all my life. Like, I feel valid enough, and I've done enough market research. Like, I had Dragon Ball Z VHS tapes. Like, I feel like I'm qualified, man. Like, I can do this. I remember when Dragon Ball Z Kai came out, and like before, having the Dragon Ball tapes, like done enough market research and spent enough dollars to be able to tackle this.
That's so dope. And then this one is the one that I do like each story, but this one, Snakebite, was like legit. I was like, what? Stop. So tell us a little bit about Snakebite. I'm like already with, like the tattoos.
Yeah. So first things first, like I tell people, this one is inspired by my love of hood movies. So things like Juice, Menace to Society, Boys in the Hood, and all those movies that I watched my entire life and still watch all the time and things like that. But this one's a story about a guy, he just got out of juvenile detention. He's him and his friends are affiliated. They're in an urban environment. They're starting to get into trouble. They're starting to feel that, that allure of the streets is starting to draw them in. And, he decides that if I'm going to do one more bad thing with my friends and misbehave a little bit, let me go get tattoos. Little did he know those tattoos were going to give him superpowers. So now he has to make the decision of whether or not, his friends they're committed. They're ready to jump fully into the streets, so now he has to decide if that's what he's going to do, or if he's going to use these powers, for good, to turn his life around, to actually do what he said he's going to do. So, like a snake, he's slithering between the paths of right and wrong, and, trying to figure out basically what he's going to do. And I feel like that's something that's super relatable, because I remember when my friends in high school started jumping off the porch and, started to do bad things, and even relating to those hood movies I love. Like, I remember that scene in Juice vividly of the dread of Q after he finished DJing and he sees everybody and it's like we're about to go rob the liquor store, or seeing Trey and Boys in the Hood when he has to tell Doughboy to let me out the car. So
Yeah.
having a lot of those moments where you have to decide, are you with it or are you not?
Yeah.
That kind of internal struggle, because sometimes it does look fun. Not every day in the streets is a bad day, so it's like, how do you navigate? How do you do what you're supposed to do versus what your friends are doing? How do you deal with that peer pressure? How do you do it when that is your world? I live in Brooklyn, so for a lot of people, they're not necessarily jumping in the streets because they hear rappers doing it. It's because their cousins are. Everybody that they care about is there. It's
Yeah.
easier to go hang out outside and on the block than it is, to go to school all day long and things like that. So, you know, wanting to tell an authentic story about that experience, because I feel like it's something that a lot of people have, and it may not be to a certain extreme, but it's like we even, on the bare minimum, had a friend that's asked you to skip class, had a friend that's asked you to go, stay a little bit later than your parents would like you to, and you're like, all right, do I do
Yep.
this? So it's like kind of dealing with that, and also dealing with it when you're a little bit too old for it to get brushed under the rug, which is why he spent time in the juvenile detention, because it's like, all right, my actions are serious now. Like, I'm too old to get slaps on the wrist now. There are consequences behind this.
Hmm.
But I
Yeah.
have enough time to kind of change it.
Yes, so I think that's why I feel like this one's the one I relate to the most because you always get asked that age-old question. If you had the force, would you use it for good or for evil? If you had superpowers, would you use it for good or for evil? And I'm always like like I know myself, I would use it for evil, 100%. There's no way I'm doing good in the world. And it would have to be that one moment where I'm like, okay, I should do something good with this, with this, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
then I think that's why it's like but there are people that walk that line. Like, can I be the anti-hero? Can I do a little bit of good and do a little bit of bad? Like, can I be both at the same time? I feel like that would be me. And I guess that's why this resonated with me because it's like, ooh, I know that struggle. I was the one going, I don't want to go to class. Come, let's go to the corner store. Because I'm from the Bronx. I'm like, let's go to the bodega and get a bagel and coffee and let's just like walk the streets. Like, you know what I mean? I was that person. So I completely get it. And I was easily influenced too. Like if you told me to like, you know, okay, your mom said 9 o'clock, but let's just stay till 9:30. I'm like, okay. Like there was no there was
exactly.
no twisting my arm. So I guess that's why this character is definitely like, oh, it close to home.
Like I said, it doesn't always have to be the extremes, but it's relatable because we all have those little moments where we push the envelope. We're like, all right, you're not allowed to buy ice cream at lunch, but you do it anyway. So it's just like, but it's those things that turn into the serious things that you see people, it's those moments where your parents are like, watch out for them. Like, I see they're always eating candy. I told you not to eat candy, but no one tells them not to eat candy. So
Exactly. Yeah. And I think all three of the stories are great and you have succeeded with telling real stories, you know what I mean? Whether they have superpowers or not, it's the fact that they're relatable, they're human, they're you and me. And I think that's what I like about the stories is it's something that not necessarily you don't necessarily have to see yourself in it, but you know someone like this. And I admire that. I applaud that because it's definitely not done a lot. And so with you saying I'm tired of the cliches, you're breaking those cliches, you're breaking those boundaries because you also stated, I didn't want stereotypicalness in it. I didn't want, what they think we are supposed to be doing with these books. You took it and you did your own thing and you did it well, you know? How has that been like receiving, seeing little kids pick up your comics or even adults like pick up your comics and be like, dang, this is good.
like I feel like, that's the most rewarding part. And it's like seeing people get it. I guess that's the thing, because it's like, it's one thing that, in my head be like, all right, so I want to make sure that, I'm making sure I'm checking all the boxes, and rewriting it a few times to be like, all right, that's relatable, and doing all these things. But like seeing people read it and be like, oh no, I get it. And like, or even at Baltimore Comic Con, like I had somebody buy books on Friday and come back on Sunday by the table and like, it was really dope, bro. Like I read through the first two and I was like, it was really dope. Or, having people, getting feedback from Greg or getting feedback from other friends that I gave the books to early, and just being like, bro, like this is dope. Like, I get it, and it's like you said, wanting it to be authentic, but not necessarily, things where it might not appeal to a wide audience, but people that know, but being able to make it, dope enough to where anybody can relate, and just, like you said, not too stereotypical, but relatable and understandable. Like there's one thing that I kind of picked up on, and like kind of want to implement as people see more stuff that comes from me and my company, is like, those authentic moments that you can't get anywhere else outside the culture. But it's like, just those relatable moments. So it's like, I don't know how in depth you read, but there's a certain moment in Dogpile where it's like, if you never look like we look, you wouldn't understand what this feels like. And you see it from two perspectives. You see it when, we're dealing with our own people, and then with people who don't look like us, but it's not overt. It's not like it's
Mm.
not in your face where it's like I'm beating you over the head,
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to
yeah.
be politically conscious, but it's like, no, this is just a regular day. And you see he takes it as if it's regular, because that's just a part of
What
our life.
happens? Yeah.
Exactly. You
No,
know,
I completely 100% get it. Especially like, growing up, I'm Hispanic. My family was strict, so I wasn't allowed to read comic books, but I was the nerd, I was the kinky-haired girl, and those kinds of um interactions, they do tend to just be everyday things, and you get it from your people, you get it from the outside people, you get it from everywhere. So it is, and it happens so much that you're just like, okay. Like, okay.
exactly. Like you see, that's not the thing that shakes him up, or even there's a scene in Adastra where she's like, I'm the only person that looks like me in school. Like, I can't miss out on this event and things like that. So it's just those little things that they don't detract from the story. They don't, stop anything in its place. But it's like that's so real, because my sister went to private school. I went to public school, but then I went to St. John's, and I've been in those spaces. I worked in corporate America, so I
Mhm.
get it. But it's
Mm.
like, you just keep going, and people that understand, and people that don't. But everybody enjoys it. Everybody's having a good time.
What would you say to someone who has a story and might be a little, not necessarily scared, but nervous to put it out there?
I would tell them take their time, and the reason why I would say first take your time is it's like, rushing isn't going to do you any good, because it's like these books are for me, time and patience, because it's like I tell a fun fact is like the main character Snakebite started out as a villain in the story I had when I was in middle school.
Oh, wow.
But it was like if I had gone with that original idea and just rushed, it would have been it wasn't as good, and also like I said, not taking feedback to heart, because starting to do this, thinking you had a really good idea one day, and then reading it back a few days later and be like, all right, this isn't as good. This isn't as dope as I thought it was. But you're rushing to like, oh no, I gotta get a script out, and it's like, take your time, think about it for a little bit longer, you know. Also, like it's so much to take your time, because if you take your time, you're like, all right, maybe this hairstyle isn't as good as I thought it was. Oh, maybe this, like for Dogpile, I went through a few artists, because, I was like, all right, nah, this isn't looking how I want it to look. Like, yeah, it'll delay it, but it's like, let me
It's
get
how
the
you
art
want.
right.
Mm.
Let me do it correctly. It's like, oh, yeah, I could rush this out. Like, even my Kickstarter, I wanted to do my Kickstarter in early September, but it was like, I don't have enough marketing. I need to reach out to people. I need to build this up a little bit more. So it's all about, time. And it's like, I feel like people say, good stories are timeless. So it's like, as long as you're not chasing fads or, doing things that it's like, all right, slashers are cool now, zombies are cool. Let me write something with zombies. Like, if you write something dope, whenever it comes out, it's gonna be dope, So take your time, take your time, take your time.
And are you doing any mentoring of your own now that you have now gone side by side with Greg? Are you doing any mentoring of your own as well?
Not yet. I mean, well, a little bit. So, the person I had tabling with me in Baltimore is my little brother. My little brother is really into photography. So, trying to take all my business knowledge from comics to be like, all right, listen, bro, you got to get, a portfolio of photos. You got to get you an LLC. We're going to find you, a lawyer like I have to write you up contracts when you take pictures, so helping my little brother out and things like that. So, not super, I'm not doing nearly as great of a job as Greg did for me, but, I'm trying.
I think both you and Greg have done a phenomenal job because I love, oh, well, not that my opinion officially matters, but I loved these stories. These stories, again, were real, relatable. Like in a way, I kind of forgot that they had like superpowers, and so their superpowers had to be used because it just felt like I was reading, like the everyday man, which it made me feel comfortable. It made me feel seen. That was 100%. Like I was like, they see me. Like I'm here. Here I am. Like, you know what I mean? And that definitely made me fall in love with it even more. So
Yeah, I love that you said that, and that's what I mean when it's like I feel validated when people get it, and it's like one of those things where it's like early into this, I would be saying things to my ex girlfriend, the one that I told you inspired the book, and I would be saying things. I'm like, all right, so this is their power, and she's like, all right, and what? Like that's it? All they are their powers? And I was like, that's all they have to be. But then it's like her pushing back on it pushed me, to invest more into the characters as far as, have them being more than just, oh, they're their powers. Like, they're dope characters. They have dope worlds that are fleshed out to where, like you said, you get emotionally attached to it. And it's like, oh, yeah, they do have powers. So it's like an extra thing. It's like an accessory that makes them even cooler. So,
I equate it to like finding that extra good French fry at the bottom of the bag when you thought you was done with your fries, and you're like, wait a second, there's like a couple more. And like that's how
yeah,
how you get excited. I don't know about you, I love food, so I'm like, yes, that's how that felt. The same excitement for me. I'm
yeah,
like, wait a second, they're relatable. Oh wait, they have superpowers. Like, great.
you know,
I'm sorry, I'm a big goofball,
that's
but
that's it.
the stories are amazing. So the Kickstarter is active right now. It ends November 16th, if I'm Yep,
Yes.
November 16th. So the link to the Kickstarter will be in the description below. Omari, thank you so much for taking time to speak with me. We're going to put the links to your website and all of your social media handles in the description below. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Like I said, guys, link to the Kickstarter is down in the description below. Go ahead and back this. You will not regret it. It is such a good read. All three books, get all three of them. Like I know he has different tiers for the single ones. Do yourself a favor and get all three of them. I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Bye, everyone.